Welcome to the first HuMEL session of 2023. I'm going to keep the preamble short because we have a loaded agenda today. I am Frank Riley. I'm the lead analyst for the lead M&E analyst for the IDEAL activity. I'll be joined in facilitating this meeting by Jenny Haddle, who leads the adaptive management team at IDEAL. Jenny, can you say hi real quick?
Hello.
And Bella Gerthofer is helping us on the production side of things. Say hi, Bella.
Hi, all.
Today, we're going to have presentations related to data utilization in emergency and humanitarian settings. We have some great speakers lined up, but before we present those folks, there are a few basic house rules that we need to go over. Please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking so that we don't hear background noise. You can use the chat box or the raise your hand button if you have a question, and we will try to call on you. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible in the time that we have. If your bandwidth allows, please turn on your video when you're speaking so that we can get to know each other a little bit better and be able to see the members of the community. And as it was noted when you logged into the session, we are recording the session today, and we're going to send out a link of the recording after the event. Okay, so before we get going with the speakers, we thought it would be useful to have a poll as kind of an icebreaker and to gain more information from the group. We want HuMEL to be more and more user-driven. And therefore, we're going to conduct a poll to identify future topics that you all think HuMEL should present. Bella is going to post an AHA slide with the link, and we would like for you to read the question, type in a response in terms of the kinds of sessions that you would like to see. I'll give everybody about 7 or 8 minutes to consider your response and type it in. And afterwards, we'll go through some of the responses together. Okay, so Bella. So everybody should be able to see the link that Bella posted in the chat. And as you type them in and hit enter, they will show up here on the board. We have about 6 or 7 minutes. I had hoped that we'd be able to see these all on the same page and we could review them and have a conversation. But perhaps if anybody is interested in sharing their idea and discussing their reasons for wanting to do that, I think that would be really useful. So I don't know if anybody has their hand up or is willing to share But Allison, I see your hand is up. If you wouldn't mind.
Hi, I got my response in first, so that was the one that got stuck on the screen for quite a while. I'm not sure if many organizations put accountability under their M&E responsibilities, but in our organization, and I see there are quite a few of my CRS colleagues on the call, we often are tasked with at least one aspect of ensuring a downward accountability on our projects, which is our feedback mechanisms. And then, of course, hopefully using that feedback, as the topic says today, to inform, modify, and tailor our programs to remain relevant to beneficiaries' needs. We have so many traditional M&E responsibilities. I find there's a lot of troubleshooting we have to do around downward accountability and collecting feedback as a source of data for our projects. And I'd love to hear about people's experiences, good practices, lessons learned, and how, especially how we can use that data to adapt programming. Over.
Thank you, Allison. I think that's a topic that's very common within the M&E community. And so, yeah, I think that's a topic that's ripe for coverage. Data privacy that we see here is another, and ethical considerations is something that I've heard people ask about in the past as well. Does anybody else have any other issues? I saw sampling when people are working across locations as an issue. This question that's up now, segregating duties for high quality monitoring. Does anybody else have a topic that maybe hasn't or wasn't displayed, hasn't been displayed yet, or wasn't displayed long enough that you would want to share with us? I see in the comments, Marie is talking about the scope creep of M&E, and I think that's definitely a problem. Okay. Yeah, apologies that we didn't work out this system a little bit better in advance, but I'm seeing Aisha's comments, Hassan Omar, Khatib's comments, Maria, Baki, Bjorn, Jennifer. We will be sure to capture the comments not only in the AHA slides, but also in the sidebar here in the chat section. And just for everybody's information, the HuMEL management team, once we've compiled all these responses, we will review them carefully after the event today, and we'll use those to determine some of the upcoming HuMEL sessions and content for that. And we will be looking for ways to improve the interactivity of this session, and again, have more user-driven events and programming. Another comment that I saw was the use of peer resources so that people can pose questions to this group, and hopefully there will be other people available to respond to those questions. That's another level of functionality that we are considering and trying to understand how to make that work. So with that, I think we should move on. We're just about 2 minutes ahead of schedule now. And I'm going to hand the session over to Jenny Haddle to present the agenda and the first speaker. Go ahead, Jenny.
Great. Thanks, Frank. And I enjoyed seeing all of the feedback from you guys. I love that the last thing that was left there was adaptive management, because it's my area of expertise, and I'm excited to be able to introduce some speakers today that will be sharing a bit more about how we close that gap between actually collecting a lot of data and then using it for learning and decision making and program improvement and adaptive management. So we have 3 presenters today. Each one's going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to have another 10 minutes of question and answers. So a time for you guys, the audience, to be able to ask any questions of the presenters or share any of your experiences that maybe are similar to what the presenters and speakers are sharing with you. So we definitely encourage that that back and forth among the participants and the speakers. So the 3, I'm not going to introduce the speakers right now. We'll introduce them each before their presentation. But as you can see, the theme really is on reflecting on data and how we translate that into to use for the program. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. And that is Tafara Makonnen. He's a Senior Monitoring and Evaluation Manager with Global Communities in Yemen. And he will be presenting on utilizing data, the communication gaps, and facilitation of learning. So let me hand it over to you, Tafara, to share with us what you have brought today.
Thank you, Jenny, for a brief introduction, and thank you everybody for coming for this presentation. As you can see from the screen, my title for today's presentation is communication gap and facilitating learning in utilizing data. So this is the topic for my presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, as you can see from the agenda, we have a few topics we outlined for as part of the agenda. First, we will see a brief, project background. Then we will go through the gap, challenges, solutions process in analyzing the data in data utilization problem, challenges. Then finally, I will also provide you some key results we found as a result of this process. So we'll see program background, then we briefly see the gap and challenges on data utilization, the solution we propose for the data utilization, the process we follow in enhancing data utilization, then finally the key examples or some results based on the data utilization process. Next slide, please. Yes, as you can see from the screen, the name of our program is Emergency Assistance, and this emergency and humanitarian assistance aim to implement, the program in Yemen to improve, seeking to increase food security, improve dietary diversity, and reduce acute malnutrition through food assistance and wash intervention. Actually, we implement this program in Yemen, in Abdallah Governorate, in the Siri district called Al-Dale, Al-Zarik, and Kataba district. Next slide, please. Yes, as you can see from the slide, just to give you background information, some 4 years ago, we learned that staff at the field level are not fully utilize the data that we bring. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so 4 years ago, we learned that staff at the field level, they are not fully utilize the data we bring, from different assessment. We do in a CAP survey, we do baseline, we do PDM, we do baseline, we do, in the line, final evaluation. Then we figure out that even if we do, intensive assessment at the field level through MNE, then we learned that staff, they didn't utilize the data to expect the level. Then we lay out a discussion among ourselves to see what are, the main challenge, what are the main gaps. After back and forth discussion, we identified that communication is a key gap. So once we identified as a communication a key gap, we categorize these communication gaps into 4 main points. The first one, we have, at that time, we have a system to share our data through email and SharePoint. And this data sharing through email and SharePoint is our system during that period. However, we learned that staff, they are not fully utilize the data to the expected level. The second item that we identified, staff have busy schedule, they are busy, they are working, busy in implementing project activity because this is humanitarian work, so the project should be implemented in a quick manner. Because of busyness, because of schedule, they don't get much time to read the reports. We also learned that there is lack of interaction between departments to the expected level, which causes errors. And finally, we also learned that there is a capacity issues. Significant time required, significant time investment is required to make report actionable. So in general, if you see these 4 elements, the basics is in a communication. Communication is a gap. So we identified communication as a gap. Then once we identify communication as a gap, we make a propose as a solution. And we propose the program quality review meeting. Next slide, please. Yes, the program quality review meeting, once we propose, we learned that it really improves our efficiency, it improves our effectiveness in the program implementation. It also enhances, or promote continuous learning, project progress reflection, close learning among departments to take informed decision. In general, from this process, what we learned that by introducing simple solution, we bring in a bigger impact, and we manage also to enhance the data utilization in effective and efficient manner. In the next slide, we will see in detail how this program quality review meeting will be performed. Next slide, please. So we'll move in detail for the program quality review meeting. What are the purpose? What are the period? Who are the participants? What's the agenda? What's the challenge? And finally, I will also pose a discussion question for the participants to provide feedback for us in order to enhance our process in a little bit more. Next slide, please. If you see the purpose, this is the most important part of my presentation. If you see the purpose, our purpose is very focused. It's very focused. Focus on efficient use of assessment results or findings, then developing joint action plan. So during this meeting, we don't have any other agenda. We don't make any discussion. What we discuss is we present the main findings from any assessment during that period. If you have midterm evaluation, we'll discuss the midterm evaluation to the main purpose. What are the methodology? What are the findings? What are the gaps? Then once we discuss, these issues, we jointly develop action plan to implement, and this action plan regularly reviewed. So the purpose is focusing on efficient use of assessment result and developing joint action plan. In terms of period, at the beginning, when we start on monthly basis. Then because of the nature of the project, because of the availability of assessment, we push to quarterly. During that quarter, whenever you have any kind of assessment, we will organize this meeting in order to discuss in details. And sometimes we do this meeting immediately after we did a kind of big significant assessment. For example, if you have final evaluation, after final evaluation, we immediately do that one. Whenever we have a midterm assessment, the same, or if there is any CAP survey. So the period, it depends on the project knowledge. For example, if you have like 5-6 project, monthly might be visible. If you have less project, less assessment, quarterly will be visible. So in terms of participant, we have the program and the mini team, and the program team will participate. The program manager will participate. The mini manager will be participated. Next slide, please. Yeah, as I said, the agenda is a result of the PDM CAP survey. Feedback mechanism will be presented, and comment and discussion will be held in order to enhance the discussion. In terms of challenge, we have like two basic challenge. One, still we have conflicting staff priorities because staff are busy. The other one, at the beginning, staff have some kind of attitude or perception for the meeting at the beginning of the meeting. Then later we solve these issues. In terms of discussion questions that we will discuss after this presentation, we can see what is the most effective method for sharing the report, and we can also reflect a discussion or reflection of the process and idea for improvement. Next slide, please. Yeah, for the sake of time, since I don't have much time, I will only explain one of the key results that we found during because of this program quality meeting, which is the finishing program on time, under budget, and or exceed target. Just to give you some background information, like 4 years ago, we do two evaluations for 2 projects, and during that evaluation, the main issue we found that is delaying the project startup. The project delayed by 4 months before the project kickoff. This delay was due to delayed in sub-agreement with the government. So once we discussed in this program quality review meeting, we propose a solution. The solution is whenever we have any project, then within the first week, we need to prepare a letter and send a letter to the Ministry of Agriculture in order to get permission to do preparatory work. This preparatory work includes sensitization of the community, targeting, and baseline assessment. And this preparatory work nearly took like 3 months. Then the signing agreement naturally took also 3 to 4 months. So by the time when we signed the agreement with the government, we also start the project. So by implementing this simple solution, for the last 3 years, we implement our program in full budget, in full time, without requesting no cost extension, which was not there before. So because of program quality meeting, because of introduction this process and getting this letter from the ministries, we managed to finish our program on time without requesting no cost extension for the last 3 meetings once we do once we introduce this program quality meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tahir, for that presentation. We'd like to open it up to the audience for any questions. So please go ahead if you would like to ask a question to clarify this presentation. Just drop it into the chat. Bella, can you go back to the slide that was just before this, the results slide? Thank you. I'm going to kick it off with a question for you. So there's a couple of things I'm interested in, but one, I see here that you changed modalities for food assistance program. So I'm kind of curious, so that's a really interesting example of adaptive management. And I'm curious if you can describe a little bit how that process went and what made you, what was it during that reflection that made you decide to change modalities?
Yes, in our modality, we provide the value voucher. We provide the value voucher to the beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries, they took that voucher, and there are like 22 food items, so they can buy from those food items from the vendor, regardless of the quality or regardless of the type, because this value voucher is giving them a chance, a flexibility for them to buy items from their side. And this methodology is the best methodology. I like this methodology. The beneficiary like this methodology at the beginning. But when the inflation increase, when the cost of living increase, the price become like triple times, commodity price become triple times than the original. Then the beneficiary gets less food than even the minimum food requirements that proposed by FSAC. So when we ask, the beneficiaries start, sending the feedback through feedback mechanism. Then we collect, the data through PDM. Then like 92% of the beneficiaries, they prefer to go back on commodity voucher than the value voucher. The main reason is the value voucher will not help them because of the commodity price. Then we go back to the community voucher. At least they will get the minimum food basket that proposed by FSAC. So we get the feel from the feedback, then we get also from the PDM, then we make this discussion in the program quality review meeting, then we adjust the modalities.
So I'm curious if how was the donor involved in that? Were you able to easily make that that pivot, or were you able to use your data to help back up that decision, or that that choice to adapt your programming?
Yes, because every month we do the market price assessment, and that market price assessment, the evaluation, the change, the analysis will go to donor on monthly reports or the update. So we do every month the market price assessment, and we also provide the committee response every month to the donor, because one of the requirements in our monthly report is updating the donor using the feedback mechanism. So we are updating the donor along with the process before we change also the modalities.
Okay, I got it. So the data was able to, you were able to share that data on a regular basis. So it was very easy to, it was already very easy to discuss that particular program change.
Yes.
I have one more question for you. Bella, can you go back to the challenges slide? I don't know if you can get back there. I saw a challenge. Yes, there we go. It was right there. I saw a challenge around, maybe you could discuss the challenges a little bit. I can't remember what they were exactly now. It was around.
Yes. Yeah. One of the challenges, the staff attitude and perception. When we introduce, this meeting at the beginning, particularly, for the first 6 months, when we present, we present, the findings. When you present the findings, you present the gaps, you present, challenges, everything. So some of our staff, they feel that they are not comfortable because this is a new process, and they feel that this might be kind of, a little bit audit or something like that one, until we clarify the purpose, something like that one. So at the beginning, one of the challenges, staff attitude and perception on on this meeting is a challenge until they internalize, the process. So it seems, we are evaluating, their work or something like that, but it's not like that. It is, a management tool to make informed decisions. So staff attitude and perception will be a challenge. If anyone in any organization wanted to start this one, I expect this might be a challenge, because it leads in a lot of discussion among the staff to see why this happened, something like that one, before coming to a joint action plan. So some staff, they correlated with their job or something like that one. That was the challenge until we figure out. This is the major challenge at the beginning. But later, when people see it, it's really helpful. When they see it, it's really bringing a lot of challenge, and it make easy. It make the change very fast. Then it becomes now a normal process in our field office.
Thank you. I see one question from Nancy Mock in the in chat here. She wants to know, with price increases, how did you finish under budget? Where were your savings?
Yes, when the price increases for that project, we are giving them a fixed. That's the problem. We are giving them a fixed value voucher, For example, we give them, if we give them 100 USD, that was we give them. But the price for the commodity significantly increased, but our value voucher is still 100. So in terms of the project, it will not affect at the beginning. Even for us from our side, might be getting a more benefit, because when the donor value increase, our budget also increase, because we get some saving from dollar exchange.
Thank you. Bella, you said there's another question above. I don't see it, but if you do, you can bring it to my attention. There's a lot of questions coming in now. We have a couple more minutes, so I'll see if we can answer a few of these. John Paul is asking, which mechanism did you use to facilitate the review meeting? Physically with staff or virtual? Which approach, if both, would you recommend?
I think physical is the best. We are using the physical approach.
The physical approach, so it was in person.
Yeah, we are using physically. We are getting the people, you know, in the office. So yeah.
Thank you. And there's another one here. Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Or we didn't try the virtual one. We tried, you know, so far with physical.
Okay. From Gerard, thank you, Tefera, for your presentation. You talked about the communication gaps between the different departments. What did you do to improve communication? And how did other departments adhere? And what are the main factors of this communication? Can see that we're sharing the same challenges. So he's very curious what you did to improve that communication.
Yes, you know, during that period, the M&E team, they do, you know, the assessment, they analyze the data. Then once we get, you know, the report, they just send to the program team, and the program team, you know, they are busy. They didn't, you know, see the program. So our main communication during that period, particularly for this aspect, is the role of the M&E is, you know, doing the assessment, you know, writing the report, you know, doing this one, then pass to the program team for them to make, you know, informed decisions. And the program team, when they receive the email or the findings, we don't know whether they are utilizing or not, or they might not utilize. That's the finding because they are busy. Or it also requires, you know, at the field level, capacity to analyze something like that one. So it seems, you know, we are moving parallelly, even if we are working together for this aspect, we are moving parallelly. So the program called review meeting, it brings us together to discuss the methodology we use, to discuss the finding we have, and to plan jointly to make action in order to improve, you know, the data utilization aspect. So by having this interaction, our communication also improves. So we start together as one team to make, you know, our data more usable. So what we change is the system. We change the system, sending from email or SharePoint. We just bring that one to the discussion because, for example, the many managers, many manager invest a lot of time to present, you know, the whole reports like within 30 minutes or within 1 hour, starting from the methodology and identifying the main findings, the main gaps, and proposing the solutions. Then lay down the discussion. So the staff discuss among themselves and propose the solution. Once they propose the solution, we start, you know, implementing the finding together. By this will bring, you know, more interaction and making the team to working together.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that. I like how you bring up the point that, you know, bringing people together and just allowing space for those people to talk to each other is a very simple method to improve communication among departments. We don't have any more time for other questions. You can please feel free to go into the chat if you see any questions you haven't answered and just give those answers. We need to move on to the next presentation, but thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I'm going to pass it back over to Frank to introduce our next presenter.
Thank you, Jenny. That was a great presentation. Tefera, thank you for your time in putting that together. I think everybody found that really useful. Our next presenter is Ermias Imiru. He's with CRS in South Sudan. He's the MEAL program manager on the Pathway to Resilience project. And his presentation is entitled Improving Data Use for Adaptive Management, a lesson from CRS South Sudan Pathways to Resilience project. Ermias, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let me know if I'm audible enough.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Very good. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Ermias. I'm working for Catholic Relief Service South Sudan as a HuMEL program manager, currently supporting Pathway to Resilience project, or P2R. It is a multi-sectoral project, emergency response operating in 4 counties in South Sudan. So today I'll be sharing our experience with data use for adaptive management. So the agendas are generally, I will be giving you background information, data sources, changes, and I'll be sharing the key lessons and recommendations at the end. Next slide, please. So to give you the background, it is quite clear that our MND system is as a mechanism where we have access to data for decision-making, learning, reporting, accountability, and also for a continuous program management. So, but the question here is much of our data use is limited for reporting and accountability, and little is explored in terms of using data for continuous decision making as well as for adaptive management. This has been not very clear and also challenging for different projects. So I'll be sharing our experience with Pathway to Resilience in terms of using and applying a series of data review sessions which are linked to our data sources. This series of meetings have led to adaptations, which are mainly small-scale changes, which we believe had led to a bigger impact. So in the next slides, I'll be sharing how we have used this series of meetings. Next slide, please. All right, so it's like any meal system, we have a couple of data sources. We have updates information from the field, and also we do also have feedback and response data from the field. So each data source is linked with review and reflection events or sessions. So to start with, the first one is the weekly updates, program updates from the fields. These were reviewed on our weekly program meetings. These weekly program meetings were happening at all aggregate levels, at all reporting levels, at county and project coordination levels, or meal and non-meal staffs were participating. So key activity level issues, implementation issues were discussed. They were developing action points. So this has happened at all levels, as I mentioned earlier. Then I would like to mention our meal technical working group meeting, which happens every month. So at this point, we were reviewing our routine monitoring data. Our routine monitoring data that we received through ITT, through our feedback and response mechanisms. All others were reviewed on monthly basis. These were consistent meetings and also linked with our weekly updates. So similar to the weekly meetings, these were also attended by all meal and non-meal staffs, and we are also developing action points. We do also conduct PDMs. We have exit interviews conducted, and as this together with quarterly reports were reviewed at quarterly review reflection meetings. This is a more centralized meeting where higher level decisions were made. So donors, stakeholders also take part, which makes it easy. And finally, we do also have annual learning event, which is more structured, and we focus on developing small questions, small, I can call it like a learning question. For example, for fiscal year 2022, we have developed questions which focus on improving learning, which improving program implementation. So this sequence of meetings have changed a couple of things, and that will be something that I'll be speaking in the next slide. Next slide, Jenny. So what has changed is something that I would really want to emphasize. So I can say 3 areas are where we highlight changes. The first one is an ongoing program implementation. In this regard, based on the review and discussions and decisions on adaptations, we were continuously reviewing our plans, and we are also changing how we do monitoring. The frequencies, the intensity of monitoring has changed. We have changed our coverage, we have changed targeting. This has greatly improved who we target, and also targeting the most vulnerable. and automatically leading to improve the relevance of the project, also improving the quality. The other aspect of the change is related to our feedback and response mechanism. So on one hand, we were able to improve the feedback and response management. On the other hand, we also improved our responsiveness and also to community feedback and also satisfaction of project participants. We have improved the internal and external integration and collaboration with partners like WFP, and this has improved in partnership and coordination in general. So what is the learning from all this is something that I'll be focusing. Next slide, please. So the learning, so the first learning is like a continuous data review has led to improving programming. We can discuss about improving the quality of implementation, improving the feedback response mechanism. Our engagement, partnership, and collaboration with partners is something that we can speak about. But what to expect in terms of this is a small scale change is something that we need to expect at early stage through time. Those coming together will really lead into bigger impacts. Number two is how to do it. So data review or data use should always go with a strong interpretation on one hand. On the other hand, it should also go with developing action plan to make adjustments or changes if we are really aiming for adaptive management or making sure that our decisions are really improving what we do. In this regard, we have conducted, we have also decided to triangulate what we have with additional assessments, with additional information where required. Number three, a key point I want to raise here is we need to be intentional in planning data review or data use and adaptive management. In this regard, different organizations have different approach in designing MIL system, but for us, for CRS, we have a system called HuMEL, where we were intentional in integrating timeline for review, tools for review, and procedures. So this will be an important recommendation and also a lesson. Management support is also another important aspect of improving data utilization. In that regard, on one hand, the management will always support the alterations or changes we do based on the data review. On the other hand, the collaboration between the MIL and non-MIL staffs will also improve. So other important issues to raise is, include, for example, making sure that the MIL staff really provide technical assistance and support for non-MIL staffs, and also assisting and making sure data is more available with any usable format is also important. So the other point is, like, we are implementing projects in a very, very fragile condition. So the donor will always expect that adaptations are welcomed and is expected. So it's important that we communicate changes to the donor. Finally, it is important to also mention that data use has also been strengthened the MIL quadrants between the monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and also learning. So so data use now appears as a strong bond linkage. Next slide, please. So the gaps are also a lesson learned for us. So so there was an attitude and assumptions that our approved DIPs and targets, our SOPs are untouched areas. So this, as in one way or another, will limit adaptation. There is, I can also say that little is explored in trying to use data from evaluations and annual surveys for adaptation. Intentionality will also be helpful in terms of planning data use at the same time adaptation. Finally, there was a good experience that I have seen in Ethiopia where small-scale changes and adaptations were recorded for future learning. So this can be an area that we can take it as a learning by making sure that these small-scale changes can lead to bigger impact. And those, if documented, it will be an important area for everyone. So these are our experiences on how we used our interlinked sequence of meetings to improve programming and to improve data use as well. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have questions and also additions.
Thank you, Ermias. I think that was also a very excellent presentation, very concise and clear. I do have a question. On one of the earlier slides, you talked about defining the learning questions for these meetings at different frequencies. You know, you had the weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual meetings. How do you do that? How do you define those learning questions? What are some of the learning questions that you've used in the past that you think really were relevant to the program and were set up to really affect change?
Thank you, Frank. So we have two sets of learning questions. The one is the one we used for the annual learning event. So one of the key issues that happens through the this weekly, monthly, and quarterly meeting was an issue of program quality. So this was an issue that we want to address. So we as HuMEL, we came up with a couple of areas that needs improvement. At the same time, program team were provided with questions to to tell us what are the key gaps in addressing program quality. So those were summarized, discussed in detail, and we have developed improvement plans. So this is used for the event, so that everyone will be very planned in terms of addressing key issues. On the other hand, we have also developed learning questions, which are on one another related to our project TOC. So in our project TOC, we have a couple of areas where we see a group approach. So those group approach should be linked with our, because we are implementing the project in a very fragile and conflict affected area, we want to link our group approach to social cohesion, conflict management, and trauma awareness activities. So we have a learning question related to that. Those learning questions want to check if our group approaches are also contributing for social cohesion and community and also conflict resolution. This one is specifically handled through case study. Currently, we are conducting the case study and that's more of qualitative by collecting data using FGDs and also key informant interviews. Maybe later, this can be an area that can also be shared to the MIL partners within CRS and outside. And obviously, it might be ready around June or July. Okay. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you. It's really critical to make sure that you're asking the right questions, and that was a very useful response. I have another question, and then we'll open it up to the group. How do you get buy-in for this more intentional data usage approach? I imagine there may have been pushback at some levels and people not as interested. What do you do to overcome that and get people kind of excited about using data?
So a couple of things matter really. So to get a buy-in, everyone should participate in the process. From the senior project management team to field level staffs, frontline staff participate in this process. This process happens at all levels, also at the coordination level, also in the field offices. So this has opened a buy-in and support from the project management team, and also making sure that relevant data is available for the right team. For example, our technical working group meeting for the meal, which happens on a monthly basis. So staffs who are reviewing the data are mainly program staffs. We don't engage operation staffs and others, which the data might not be really helpful for them. And making that the data is more useful is important. So the ITT, as you know, the indicator tracking table is a long list of indicators with figures. It's always confusing for a non-MIL staff. So trying to making it more usable for non-MIL staffs as always, trying to use dashboards, making sure that, that the data is breakdown by different thematic areas will always help us to make discussions and interpretations more easy for all staffs. And discussions were flowing on that way.
Great.
Thanks.
Areas. I want to open the questions up to the floor, and I hope Marie Baki won't mind that I put her on the spot. She had a question in the comment section that I think would be really useful to understand. Marie, do you want to raise that yourself? I could read it off your notes, but maybe it would be better to get you to kind of.
Thanks, Frank. I wasn't expecting to speak, but sure. And you said my last name correctly, which is rare. I just, when we talk about like data utilization, I often think about, well, who's the decision maker? Who needs that data, right? And do they know how to use the data? Do they know how to read it? Do they know how to interpret it? And oftentimes, at least from my perspective, it's not the job of M&E to make decisions to use the data. That is the responsibility of your project or your program leadership. And if they don't understand what it is that they need, or what kinds of inquiry or questions or answers that they need, or even how to read or interpret data, that is another problem. I think for me, like M&E is their job is to, collect data, to analyze it and present it in a way that it is understandable, that is digestible, that is can be interpreted by those people who may not have that data background. So in many ways, I feel like M&E is in a position of like data translation and making it, almost like data storytelling, if you will. So I think there are two sides to this coin here where, we're as M&E people, you're presenting data that can be used and interpreted. On the other hand, I often see a gap in just those people who are actually doing the decision making and making sure that they are well educated and socialized and oriented on this kind of skill set. And then oftentimes I also see like a lot of M&E people are so bogged down because they've got so many responsibilities and they're just trying to meet donor requirements that they're not actually able to spend time on producing data products that the program actually needs to make decisions, to be adaptive, to improve their programming. Over.
Yeah, thank you. Arias, I wonder if you had a response to that. Do you find, I think there's actually two sides to this, as Marie said. On the one hand, it may be the case that decision makers aren't necessarily well versed in how to use information. And on the other hand, maybe M&E staff aren't necessarily asking the right questions, and there's a gap in between the two. So we're collecting data that may be useful, it may not be useful, because we don't really understand the programming context as well as the decision makers. And the decision makers may not have the training in the use of data to really understand how that works. So it may be a problem on two sides. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that in your experience.
Thank you. I think the best way we can promote use data is by making sure that we link it with good questions. So if we raise very good questions in terms of each subsectors, each areas, it will always easy to use data and to know who will answer to those questions. I can mention a very simple example, like our project participants satisfied with the distribution process? Is like, this is a very simple question I might raise here. Does our trainings have the required quality level? Yes or no, kind of things always come. So I think the best way is to make sure that we have a very good questions with a possibility of providing with necessary data, which will ease decision making. So of course, the decision makers are sometimes technical sector leads and for parties and others. However, the way we present the question, the way we bring, especially the data from PDM, exit interviews, and assessments, have always been straightforward in assisting us to address a couple of our gaps in answering our requests. So I would say we need to be very clear in the question from the back. Then again, engagement is also another important when we speak about actual implementation. So engagement, in a sense, our technical working group is attended by sector leads and also by the mill staffs also. This was an opportunity where a couple of things can be discussed to address. Last example I might give, or last experience I might give, is like we were also intentional in conducting some of our assessments. For example, we have been depending on WFP cash transfer modalities. So we have seen data indicating that distribution process, number of people receiving cash, and all others have issues, and it was against target. So in that regard, we have to conduct an assessment to find out the issue behind. So this has helped us to totally change our distribution approach, and we now adopting a different approach. So in that regard, we were very clear what we want to know, and it has linked with a couple of learning questions behind it, or I don't call it learning questions, but issues to address or questions to answer. Yeah.
Okay, and just to reference a comment that Conrad made in the chat, do you include the decision makers in identifying these questions? I mean, is that a joint effort, or is it something that you identify through the data? What's the next question to ask?
Yes. So the very good thing about this interlinked meeting is, like, on the weekly meetings, everyone attends. Everyone who is implementing the project, from the chief of party, the deputy, program lead, sector list, everyone attends at different levels, and the information from the field also feeds into the same center. So discussions, decisions, action plans are all the same across an implementation process. So when we decided to move on from WFP cash transfer process to a Red Rose system, it was a decision, and it was an issue which was discussed in the weekly meetings, on the monthly meetings, and the decision to conduct an additional assessment to find out what's going on was done during the quarterly meetings. So the decision makers were really behind the process, and the way they have the information, they are also aware of the raw level. So distribution cash and number of people receiving cash at lower level and behind the target always strikes everyone. So everyone knows about it anyway. So this is just a simple example that I want to bring in, but we have changed a couple of things in agriculture, in water nutrition, in adult literacy, in other sectors. This was in collaboration with everyone participating in the process. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I know there's more questions. Leslie has a question as well, and hopefully, Ermias, you can review those and answer them in the chat, but we need to move on. So I'm going to hand it back over to Jenny, and she'll introduce the next speaker. Thank you, Ermias. That was great.
Great, thank you. All right, so our final speaker for today is Conrad Murindo. He's the Program Learning Advisor with Mercy Corps in Zimbabwe. And he is going to share with us a new tool that's been recently released to the implementing partner community called the Food for Thought Toolkit. It's a pause and reflect toolkit for emergency food security programs. So let me hand it over to you, Conrad, to share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And am I audible?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So I'm Conrad Murindo. I'm going to take you through the Food for Thought Pause and Reflect Toolkit that we developed with funding from Ideal Small Grants in 2020 to 2022. Basically, against a background that programs and even organizations transition from one phase to the other without systematically learning. And like what Tefera and Emiri has highlighted, programs need to pause and reflect so that they use the reflections for future programming and improving development outcomes. And we found out that there was no guidance, there was no toolkit on how to conduct a pause and reflect. So basically, we did this, and the pause and reflect is a key domain of the adaptive management of the collaboration, learning, and adaptive framework developed by USAID. Next slide. Great. So you agree with me that the timing of the pause and reflect depend on the context of the program. For multi-year programs, we recommend annual pause and reflect sessions, but of course with lighter pause and reflect sessions along the way. For single-year programs, ideally at the end of the program. For programs that are less than 9 months, we also recommend after-action reviews for then programs to harvest learnings and inform future programming. And we transition to the next slide. So the toolkit that we developed with funding from IDEAL offers a step-by-step guidance, resources, templates on how to conduct a pause and reflect session. The practical tools that are contained there include both the planning, the implementation, and the facilitator's guide, which I'll show you visually in the next slide. Right. In the toolkit, which you are able to download now, you'll find that the tools are arranged in 3 domains. We have the planning tools, the preparatory tools, the implementation tools, and the follow-through tools. For example, as you prepare your pause and reflect session, you need to plan, you need to identify the facilitator, be it internal or external. You also need to identify the learning priorities depending on the stage of your program, develop an agenda, identify different data sources, be it from ITT, context monitoring, and we recommend programs to use data from multiple sources to enhance the learnings. The next domain looks at tools that will help the facilitator and the participants during the pause and reflect workshop. How do you develop a program timeline? How do you facilitate it? In the toolkit also, there's a framework that is very useful, which we call the strength, opportunities, aspiration, and results. It's similar to the SWOT analysis, but we chose this one because this one is more future oriented, because it then looks at the aspirations and the results, which are then useful for action planning, similar to what Tefera and Miriam just said. And it then also gives you templates on how to draw the lessons learned and how to evaluate the workshop. One important piece of this toolkit is we have seen programs, they have done pause and reflect session, but they then they don't have a follow through. So there's need for action planning and also documenting and following up on these action plans. So in the toolkit, you find that there's an interactive session where you can access these resources in the toolkit once you download. And next slide, please. Yes, in the toolkit again, another important resource or practical tools are the facilitators guides. It guides the facilitators on how to plan for a pause and reflect toolkit session, and during the implementation of pause and reflect, how do you set up the workshop? How do you even facilitate, for example, the strengths, opportunities, and aspiration discussions so that programs are able to highlight the strengths, the opportunities, and the aspirations, then the results that are then forward-looking and how do you wrap it up and even evaluate the pause and reflect session. Next slide, please. Great. So here I'll just give you kind of an example of the discussion. The facilitators guide is very detailed. It gives you the step-by-step methods of how you can then facilitate this. For example, the probing questions around the scope, the program work plan, the budget, and the quality, with the itemized time frame. In the next step, how do you engage the team to come up with strengths and opportunities? And most of the programs, we don't encourage you to go beyond 5 strengths. Even if you have them, you need to prioritize and also then identify the sources of evidence for those strengths and opportunities. Once you have identified that, you then need to move on to the aspirations, the hopes that you want to see. And also, once each aspiration is met, what is it, the tangible result from the program participants, from the program staff that you want to see your program being successful and impactful. And usually once you have these results, you can even tie them up with the program timeline and also tie them, say, for the next 2 to 3 years, which results are we going to concentrate on? So basically it gives you all the details, but you are free to adapt, modify depending on your facilitation, the time frame, and even these steps. Next slide. So what I'll give you during the pilot phase in Indonesia, we also use this strength, opportunities, aspiration, and results framework for an MRIT program, which is an emergency program, which is focusing on disaster risk reduction. And we found out that the program has strength in sending out early warning systems to participants of an impending disaster. And through the discussion with the program staff, we realized that the opportunities lie in having power source backups so that there is continuous early warning systems to the program participants. And what the program then aspired is to have backup communication so that there is no disruption in the sending off of the early warning system. And what this led now is some adaptive management where the program is now using also radio communication if there's no electricity so that the early warning systems are continuously being sent. And also there's some battery backups so that there's continuous electricity. So this is some adaptive management that has come out from this application of this SOAR framework. And usually from the results section, they can then lend themselves to some action planning, which you can then use and then plan the next steps for your program. Next slide. Right. So what we have done at Mexico is we have rolled out this toolkit within the ideal. We launched it in February, and we have been adapting it and using it for various programs. We also used it at the strategic PAC unit, which is a performance and quality unit for our retreat, where we are looking at our strengths and opportunities for the last 2 years, and then we looked at the aspirations and results for the next 2 years. We have used it also for our BHA Elevate program in Zimbabwe. In Nigeria, we are rolling out various quarterly review meetings, adapting tools and resources from the pause and reflect session. Equally, in Gemera, again, we are using some of these. For example, we are using the lessons learned template, the action planning template, the SOAR framework. So what we have done is develop this toolkit to enable the global community to adapt, modify, and use these resources for their different programs. Once you download the toolkit, you find that there are editable Word versions for the various resources, which you are able to modify and scale up depending on your program context. So that's the beauty about this toolkit. and now it's available on the ID website and is externally facing for use by the global community. So with this next slide, I thank you and I open it to some reflections. Over to you, Jenny.
Great, thank you so much, Conrad. I just want to point out that Bella has pasted into the chat a link to a website where you can access the toolkit. And also there is a more extensive webinar that's introducing the toolkit that's in that link as well. So if you want more details or more information about how it has been piloted and used, you can feel free to watch that, that webinar. It's currently available in English and very soon will be available in French. We're finalizing the French version as we speak. So that will be posted up soon. And just also to note a quick instruction on how to download it when you do, because it is an interactive PDF, which makes it, you know, a really nice resource to use. You have to download it as a zipped file and extract all the files into the same folder in order to make sure that the links within the interactive PDF are working. So it is a fantastic resource. I encourage you to take a look at it and play around with it. I just want to point out a comment in the chat from Marie around how important it is because of the, you know, kind of distinctly unique characteristic of emergency and humanitarian programs and projects. Things have to be speedy, so it's really great to have a ready-made toolkit here available for use, as there just really isn't a lot of time to spend on creating these resources. So I'm curious, actually, just a question to build off of that. How easy have you, in your experience with rolling the toolkit, how easy has it been for programs to modify it or to adapt it to their context and how they would like to use it? Because it's, I mean, it is very, there's a lot of different tools there. So I'm just curious how easy it is to modify that.
Great, thank you, Jenny. So what we have done also, the tools and the practical tools that are there, they are kind of neutral in terms of that they can be versatile and adapted to even development programs. What we have done is, for example, today we are doing a pause and reflect for a WASH program in Zimbabwe, but because we don't have time, the program is closing tomorrow. So we even just adapted and focused on the strengths and opportunities of the program and the key lessons learned. And we are adapting that because of the context of the program. For the HuMEL program, because we still have time, we have developed we have used I think about 3 tools: the SOAR framework, the program timeline, and we are using the action planning and the lessons learned. And this, the beauty is that we have capacity built the M&D manager, and Yemen will be doing that physically, but us will be connecting with him, supporting and co-facilitating remotely. So we have been adapting this to different contexts. We have also adapted it for our, maybe our PAC unit at headquarters, to just not look at the program level, but at the unit level, strengths and opportunities, and what are the evidence. Even at country level, as you develop your country strategy, you can also adapt some of those concepts. Over.
Thank you, Conrad. I have one more question. I'm also curious, you created this toolkit in order to be able to utilize the learning as, say, an emergency program ends and another one starts. Often there's a cycle there that happens over and over again. And I'm wondering if you can share, you know, your thoughts on when you think is an ideal time to pause and reflect, so that you can actually look at the data from the current program and incorporate it into the design of the next iteration of that program.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'll give you an example. For Nigeria, we have an ADAPT program, ADAPT 3, which is ending, and we have a follow-on which is called BEG, funded by USAID potentially. So what we did is 2 months towards the end of the ADAPT 3, we have been doing quarterly review meetings, but we strategically had a pause and reflect session to harvest key learnings, key innovations that we are doing for the ADAPT 3 program, which we then be using in the development of the proposal for the next phase, and also tying this to the key donor questions that they are asking, the evidence pieces that they are asking, and also then mirroring this to the key proposal focus areas like resilience, youth, and gender and social inclusion. So we have been using this already to inform the future programming. And also what we are doing for the WASH now, the program is ending, but we are kind of having even a 1-day pause and reflect session to harvest the key learnings, areas of opportunities, and models that we can potentially use for future programming. So it's a versatile tool which you can use in any setting. Over.
Great. Thank you so much, Conrad. I think I'll pass it back over to Frank. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. So Frank, I'll pass it back over to you to wrap up and close out this session. And just thank you to all of the speakers. I've really enjoyed this session.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah, this has been a great conversation, to all the presenters especially. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with the community. It's great to have these kinds of exchanges among peers. As a final request to everyone, we have our own evaluation survey that we would like for you to fill out for us to help us improve and get better as we move forward. Bella, I think you'll have the link up in the chat.
Yes, the link is there.
Okay, yeah, it would be really useful to us to hear from you all. Also, there's another set of questions within the form about joining our other peer community, which is related to qualitative monitoring and evaluation. If you're not familiar with the QualMe group, there is a description of it on the FSN Network website. That's fsnnetwork.net, I think. Is that right, somebody? Yeah, we'll be sending a follow-up email in the next few days with materials from today, including the recording from today's sessions and any of the resources that we've highlighted. And also, please be on the lookout for the FSN Network newsletter for upcoming events in the series. We're going to try to do 3 events this year, and hopefully they will be at least as good as this one, and hopefully better. Really like the quality of what we've been able to produce so far, but we're looking to make some changes and improve how this community works and interacts with one another. So again, please fill out the survey at the link that's been provided, and thank you all very much for your time.